Some tourists come to London for the history, some come for the culture, and some like Mark Davis, come with zero common sense and a desperate need for internet fame. When he saw a small, restricted gate near Buckingham Palace, he had an idea. What if I just slipped in, for the views? What he didn't realize was that the royal guard doesn't just stand there for decoration. And within seconds of stepping over the barrier, Mark learned a painful lesson. Because by the time his face hit the pavement, his arms twisted behind his back, and the cameras were rolling. The internet had already sealed his fate. London at night was alive with energy. Tourists flooded the streets near Buckingham Palace, snapping photos, laughing, taking in the history and grandeur of one of the most iconic landmarks in the world. But Mark Davis? Mark wasn't here for history. He was here for views, for clout, for that one viral video that would get him 1 million likes overnight. And as he leaned against a barricade near the side gate of Buckingham Palace, beer in one hand, phone in the other, he spotted something that made his booze-fueled brain spark with stupidity. A small, gated entrance leading to a restricted area. His pulse kicked up a notch. His friends were filming. The crowd was watching. And then, the worst idea of his life hit him like a freight train. Mark smirked, turning to his 2 best friends, Jason and Kyle, who were already several drinks deep and in full "let's do something dumb" mode. "Dude, I bet I can sneak in." Jason, still holding up his phone, snorted. "You're joking." Kyle, slightly more sober, frowned. "Bro, that's a crime. Like, an actual crime." But Mark? Mark wasn't thinking about the law. He was thinking about the likes. "Come on, man, just for a second. In and out. Nobody will even notice." Jason grinned, already recording. "Bet, this is gonna go viral." Kyle sighed. "This is so dumb." But he still didn't stop him, and neither did the crowd, which had started gathering, curious about what was happening. Some people were whispering, shaking their heads, but others were pulling out their phones, waiting to see how this disaster would unfold. Mark took one last swig of beer, tossed the can, and cracked his knuckles. And then, he grabbed the gate and hoisted himself over. As soon as his feet hit the ground on the other side, something in the air shifted. The casual buzz of the crowd was replaced with sharp whispers. Someone gasped. A woman muttered, "Oh, he's done." But Mark wasn't listening. He was grinning, arms out, soaking in the moment. "Easy. Too easy." He turned to the camera, spreading his arms wide like a champion. "Welcome to Buckingham Palace, baby." But before he could take another step, before he could even process the cheers and laughter behind him, a shadow moved. A rifle shifted. And then, thump. A boot slammed onto the pavement, and a deep, booming voice shook the air. "Stand back!" Mark's stomach dropped. Because standing just feet away from him now, moving with the speed and precision of a trained soldier, was a royal guard. And the look in his stone-cold eyes? It said one thing: run. But Mark didn't run fast enough. And now? He was about to learn a very, very painful lesson. Mark had expected nothing to happen. He thought this was all for show, that the royal guards were just decorative, standing there like human mannequins, unable to react. But as soon as his feet touched the restricted ground, reality hit him like a freight train. Because the royal guard moved, and he moved fast. Thump. The sound of a boot slamming into the pavement sent a shockwave through the air. It was so loud, so sharp, that it didn't just cut through the crowd's whispers. It silenced them. Mark's heart stopped. His beer-fueled confidence evaporated. And then, "Stand back!" The command erupted through the square, deep, powerful, and undeniably serious. This wasn't a mall cop telling him to leave. This was a soldier. a trained professional, giving him a direct order. And suddenly, this wasn't funny anymore. The tourists watching from behind the barricades gasped, their phones shaking as they zoomed in. A woman near the front clutched her husband's arm. "Oh my God, he's actually in trouble!" A guy in the back laughed, shaking his head. "Bro thought this was a video game." And Mark? Mark was frozen. For the first time in his life, he had no idea what to do. Run? Apologize? Drop to his knees and beg for forgiveness? His brain was screaming at him to move, but his legs wouldn't work. And unfortunately, neither would his mouth. The royal guard didn't hesitate. He took one powerful step forward, rifle shifting slightly, his grip tightening. Not in a way that suggested he was about to attack, but in a way that made it very, very clear that he could if necessary. Mark finally snapped out of his trance. Wait, dude, I was just... Too late. Because in one seamless motion, the guard closed the distance, and before Mark could even process what was happening, a gloved hand slammed into his chest. Not an attack, not a punch, but a perfectly executed military maneuver. A forceful, controlled shove meant to create distance, and it worked, because Mark stumbled backward, his feet scrambling to find solid ground. And then, his balance failed him, and in the most glorious, slow-motion disaster imaginable, Mark crashed flat onto his back. For a moment, there was silence, and then the entire square exploded. Laughter, shouts, cheers. Phones zoomed in, capturing every single second of Mark's downfall. Someone whistled. A guy near the back yelled, "Oh, he got dropped." Jason, still filming, was crying with laughter. Dude, you just got bodied by the guard." Kyle, standing next to him, was pale. "Bro, I told you this was a bad idea." And Mark? Mark was lying on the pavement, staring up at the cloudy London sky, realizing that he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The Royal Guard? Already back in position, already reset, as if Mark had never existed, as if he wasn't even worth remembering. And somehow, that was worse than getting knocked down, because Mark had tried to be the main character, and instead, the guard had just removed him from the narrative entirely. But unfortunately for Mark, this wasn't over, because while the guard had already moved on, the Metropolitan Police hadn't. And judging by the sound of boots approaching fast, Mark was about to have an even bigger problem. Mark lay flat on his back, eyes wide, staring up at the cloudy London sky. His entire body ached, but the pain wasn't from the fall. It was from the realization that he had just embarrassed himself in front of hundreds of tourists. And the internet. Because even as he tried to gather himself, he could hear it. The unmistakable sound of dozens of phones still recording. And then, the boots. Heavy, fast, unforgiving. Mark didn't need to look to know. The Metropolitan Police were coming, and they weren't coming to shake his hand. Mark's instinct was to run. His body screamed at him to get up and bolt. But the moment he tried to scramble to his feet, he made the second worst mistake of the day. He locked eyes with the Royal Guard. And that's when he realized this wasn't over, because the guard was still standing there, posture perfect, eyes fixed forward, completely indifferent to Mark's existence. He had just been tackled to the ground, humiliated beyond belief. And the guard didn't even blink. That hurt worse than the pavement. Mark had risked everything to break him. And instead, the guard had let Mark destroy himself. And somehow, that was so much worse. Before Mark could even get his bearings, 2 uniformed officers appeared in his line of sight. One grabbed his arm, yanking him up roughly. The other placed a firm hand on his shoulder, pinning him in place. The lead officer, a grizzled, no-nonsense Brit with sharp eyes, tilted his head slightly. Well, 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 what do we have here? Mark gulped. The officer's grip tightened. You just attempted to trespass on royal property. You understand how serious that is, yeah? Mark nodded quickly, but the officer wasn't finished. And just so we're clear, you ignored all the signs, climbed over a barrier, got physically removed by an active-duty soldier, and now you're standing here looking like a right idiot. Is that about right? Mark swallowed hard. It was a joke? The officer's expression didn't change. Oh, mate, you're gonna be the joke. The tourists were eating this up. Some were laughing openly. Others were still recording, whispering about how this was going to go viral. One guy in a leather jacket shook his head. People never learn. A teenage girl, still filming, grinned. This is going to be on every meme page by tomorrow. And then, just when Mark thought it couldn't get worse, a kid, no older than 6, tugged on his mom's hand and asked, Mommy, why is that man so stupid? The crowd howled. The officer smirked. Mark? Mark wanted to crawl into the earth and never come back. The officer sighed and clicked his radio. We've got a trespassing attempt at Buckingham. 1 detained. Mark's entire body went cold. Wait, detained? The officer nodded. Yep. You can explain yourself at the station. Mark's stomach dropped. This was so much worse than he expected. He had thought he'd get a slap on the wrist, maybe a stern warning. But now he was about to go viral for all the wrong reasons. And worst of all, the Royal Guard had already reset, back in position, back to being completely unbothered, as if Mark had never existed, as if this entire thing was beneath him. And that was true defeat. But unfortunately for Mark, the internet was just getting started. Mark felt his arms yanked behind his back, cold metal snapping around his wrists before he could even protest. The crowd gasped, then exploded into cheers as the Metropolitan Police officer cuffed him. Someone in the back shouted, "And he's gone!" A group of teenagers chanted, "UK! UK! UK!" like this was some kind of national victory. And through it all, the Royal Guard stood motionless, unshaken, undefeated, and completely indifferent. Mark had tried to break the guard. Instead, the guard had broken him. And now? Now, the entire world was watching. The officers dragged Mark toward the police car, his feet stumbling as he tried to keep up with reality. This wasn't how today was supposed to go. It was supposed to be funny. A quick viral video, a harmless prank. Not this. Not getting shoved into the back of a police vehicle while strangers filmed his downfall. Jason and Kyle, his so-called friends, were still recording, still laughing. Kyle cupped his hands around his mouth. "Bro, you just made history," Jason howled, waving his phone. "Dude, you're famous. This is going to be everywhere." Mark groaned into his chest. He already knew that, because the internet moves faster than the law. And by the time he reached the police station, the video would already be viral. By the time Mark was booked into holding, his phone, confiscated but still vibrating in his pocket, was already blowing up. His name was trending. The video? Everywhere. And the comments? Brutal. Man thought he was in a heist movie, forgot he was an idiot. And then, the meme edits began. Someone had slowed down the moment Mark hit the ground, adding dramatic music and black and white filters. Another video had a WWE commentator screaming, "Oh my God, he's broken in half," over the tackle. One genius edited a Metal Gear Solid sound effect as the guard moved. And then came the worst one. Someone photoshopped Mark's face over a Call of Duty mission failed screen. Caption, "Should have stayed behind the barricade." Mark groaned. It was too late. His face was now an immortal meme, And the world was eating it up. It wasn't just social media anymore. By the time Mark was released from holding, actual news websites were covering it. BBC, CNN, Elad Bible, the Daily Mail, all with savage headlines like, "American tourist arrested after Buckingham Palace stunt goes horribly wrong." Even late-night TV hosts got in on it. James Corden, grinning at the screen, said, "This guy thought he was in Mission. Impossible. Turns out it was Mission. Immediately arrested." The audience howled. Trevor Noah, shaking his head, added, "Imagine risking your freedom just to get bodied by a dude who didn't even blink." The audience lost it. And Mark? Mark was losing his mind. Mark finally got his phone back, only to see a text from his mom. "Mark, call me, right now. Why is your face all over the news?" Mark's soul left his body. His grandmother had also messaged him. "Oh, honey, I saw a video of you. You fell down in England? Are you okay? We're praying for you." Praying. His grandmother was praying for him. Meanwhile, Kyle and Jason were crying with laughter. Kyle smacked his shoulder. "Dude, you're literally famous." Jason grinned. "Yeah, just not in the way you wanted." Mark buried his face in his hands. This wasn't just a mistake. This was his legacy now. Somewhere, just outside Buckingham Palace, the royal guard still stood at his post. Tall, silent, unshaken. And while Mark's life had just been ruined, the guard had already forgotten he existed. Because at the end of the day, Mark wasn't a challenge. He was just another tourist who learned the hard way that the king's guard never loses. Mark sat in his hotel room, phone in hand, staring at the wreckage of his life unfolding in real time. He had hoped, prayed, that maybe, just maybe, the video would get a little traction before dying out. Instead, it had become a full-blown internet event. And the worst part? It wasn't going away. His video, the one where he got tackled by a royal guard and arrested in front of hundreds of tourists, was now at 15 million views and climbing. The comment section, pure, unfiltered brutality. Bro thought he was playing Assassin's Creed. And then, of course, the memes kept coming. One video had been edited with dramatic slow-motion, deep bass sound effects and text reading, "The moment he knew, he messed up." Another, someone had photoshopped his face onto a medieval knight getting struck down in battle. Caption, "His Majesty's Royal Defense System, still undefeated." And then came the worst one, a meme of Mark's terrified face frozen mid-tackle, next to a completely unshaken royal guard, side by side, with the caption, "Strength 100, Stealth 0, Intelligence 5. Mark groaned. This wasn't just a bad day. This was his entire reputation now. And then, the late-night talk shows got in on it. Jimmy Fallon played the clip on The Tonight Show, shaking his head. "Ah, yes, the classic run at a British soldier and see what happens technique. Always ends well." The audience roared with laughter. Stephen Colbert smirked, shaking his head. "Sir, this isn't a prank. This is an international incident." Trevor Noah, barely holding in his laughter, added, "You traveled all the way to London just to fight a guy who's trained to ignore your existence?" The audience lost it. Mark? Mark wanted to vanish from the earth, and then, just when he thought things couldn't possibly get worse. His mom called. Mark stared at the screen. The words "Mom" flashed on his phone like a death sentence. He took a deep breath and picked up. Mark Alexander Davis. Full name. Immediate red flag. Mark winced. Hey, Mom. Why is your face all over the news? Why did Grandma call me crying thinking you got deported?" Mark rubbed his temples. Okay, it's not that bad. Not that bad? You got taken down on camera by a British soldier, Mark. You're a meme. Mark groaned. Mom, please. Your boss saw it, Mark. Your boss. Silence. Mark's stomach dropped. Yeah, Dave from HR? He emailed me asking if everything was okay. Mark, what did you do? Mark leaned back, staring at the ceiling. This was worse than jail. This was worse than the internet roasting him. This was family shame, and it was never going away. Across London, back at Buckingham Palace, the royal guard stood in his perfect posture. Same spot, same stance, completely unbothered, completely unmoved. Because to him, this wasn't even a story worth remembering. It was just another dumb tourist who learned the hard way. And Mark? Mark would carry this for the rest of his life. Because while the guard had already forgotten, the internet never would.